A lot of persons have asked me, and I have also tried to listen to people on why Bola Ahmed Tinubu should not be re-elected as president of Nigeria in 2027. A lot of emotional outbursts here and there, sentiment, political differences, uh, lack of ideology. A lot of things have been said. But I'll tell you, and if you listen to me carefully, I'll tell you why Bola Ahmed Tinubu should not be re-elected. Beyond any interest for economic prosperity of a country, government policies and programs that tend to uplift the livelihood of the citizenry. Some of the greatest foundation for a growing society are but not limited to rule of law, separation of power, and due process. Now, let me tell you, if a society cannot conveniently beat its chest to say that rule of law is enshrined in the day-to-day runnings of that society, if separation of power is not as common as anything, and if due process is still not being a position that everybody understands and follow in the country, on the society, then there is a problem. If you take us back through history, okay, before we even do that, so what is the rule of law? Rule of law ensures that government actions are based and limited by law. It means that everything the government does is limited by law. That law stops, the government stops where the law stops. That the government is quiet where the law is quiet. That the government is loud where the law is loud. Separation of power, on the other hand, is the division of power amongst the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. It means that a society is tend to be reckoned as a society that has the potency to growing and delivering on its promise to its citizen when there is adequate separation of power, when the court is independent. But in this country, as we see now, as it's presently constituted in Bola Ahmed Tinubu's government, it is not just it is making laws, because several of the laws that we think that the legislative is making has been what the executive has put forward to. It is also have taken up its own power of not just executing law, it has also now begun to interpret law in the way that it suits it. And now it seems like they're also punishing law offenders. And that's a problem. Now, what is due process? Due process, right, guarantees legal proceedings, legal procedures, for example, and also protect individual rights in legal proceedings. It means that every single individual, every single structure, system, organization, community, all of them are made to go through a particular system where everybody are equal to the law and their rights are protected. And of course, the processes are also protected by law. Now, ask yourself, why is this not the case? And so, irrespective of what the society achieve economically, if this very strong triangle of societal sustainability is not guaranteed, is not evident, then all of this. And you know why this is very important to me? If you follow the Olusegun Obasanjo 1999-2007 quasi-military civilian era, which of course was also now being visible in the Muhammadu Buhari 2015-2023 government, because both of them came from military background and then had civilian. Obasanjo had a more terrible work to do, because the constitution was written by military leaders that wanted to hand over to civilian government, who couldn't have asked for too much after they had agreed willfully to allow us have power, go back to civilian rule. It also, again, Obasanjo also needed, in his own wisdom, thought he wanted to create a system that would ensure that, yes, we are democratic, but a bit of military things to ensure that some things were done in compliance. But that's not what democracy is. Obasanjo clearly did not have democratic principles and tenets in his blood, and it can be forgiven. However, when Umaru Musa Yar'Adua assumed office in 2007, precisely May, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua went on to pursue 7-point agenda. But very keenly, Umaru Musa's position as president was that the rule of law, separation of power and due process was a key interest of his governance. And I'm going to read a piece, and that's why I think that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should have taken cue, because you were taking over government from a quasi-military civilian personality. It was only normal that you return. However, in this case, Muhammadu Buhari was even better or is even better than Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I read a piece from Daily Trust. I think it was the 58th annual conference of Nigerian Bar Association in 2019, and this was an attribute being read about late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. Just listen and join me, right? Rather, my interest here to remind us that there was a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria who personified rule of law in theory and practice. Follow. He was President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, 16th August 1951 to 5th May 2010, the 13th President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, has rightly called President Buhari to order to be politically and democratically correct with respect to rule of law. It's time we posthumously celebrate late President Musa Yar'Adua for unambiguously, without prodding, adhering to the rule of law. Of his celebrated 7-point agenda was commitment to due process and deference to court rulings. He did that with significant successes. He was declared the winner of the presidential election of April 2007 and sworn in 29th May 2007. President Yar'Adua accepted that the election which produced him was flawed and proceeded to set Uwais Committee on Electoral Reform. He promptly declared his assets. In 2007, he accepted commendably the reversal of the twin policies of VAT and fuel prices increases in the wake of NLC-TUC mass protestations on the illegal ground that Obasanjo quasi-military civilian government jumped due process in policy pronouncement. Supreme Court pronouncement with respect to Anambra State was promptly enforced by President Yar'Adua, making Governor Peter Obi the first executive beneficiary of the rule of law in the new dispensation. Lagos State Federation money was equally refunded following a correct interpretation of the Supreme Court judgment in a judicial damnation of the impunity under President Olusegun Obasanjo. The reversal of the controversial sale of refineries in the dying days of OBJ was also done on account of undue bidding and processes. Never before has a government recorded such qualitative achievement by a singular stroke of quality policy control measured with respect to application of the rule of law. OBJ's decade of impunities were characterized by legal anarchy, riots of court interpretations, court boycotts by NBA to press home the need for court order compliance and serial court pronouncements against executive abuses of due process. The rule of law deficit of the recent past definitely made commitment to it in the new dispensation a logical and worthy imperative. I think I'll stop there. You see it. There were several. So businesses that were done, government policies and programs, including the sale of refineries, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua agreed, even if it was his godfather technically, but that gave him power. He knew that all of these had not followed rule of law, separation of power, and due process, especially due process, for example. And that's how people like Governor Adams Oshiomhole, that is now a protege of Tinubu, that benefited from rule of law, due process, separation of power, now enforcing his will and agreeing that we should run an anarchy government, or we should run a government that is lawless. People like Olusegun Mimiko of Ondo State, now you just said Peter Obi's name, they were beneficiary. In fact, when a society lacks rule of law, people suffer. When a society upholds rule of law, separation of power and due process, the society benefit, and common people will benefit. So it is on this premise that I am indifferent about the re-election of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, because we cannot say we are prospering as his people. And guess what? Obasanjo government recorded several economic successes, but all of this masqueraded the challenge that he had, and somebody came to correct that. I expected someone like Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who said he fought for democracy through NADECO, who said that he saw with his open eyes the way that 1993 election that was won by his mentor and role model was quashed, and it was cancelled, it was annulled by anti-democratic people. You would have thought that as he got to power, democracy and all his attendant ethics and principles would be what he would stand up for. And you want to tell me somebody like that? Should Nigeria re-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it will be worse than a military government. It will be worse than a military government. And it will be a terrible, terrible dent on what we say that we are practicing democracy. I rest my case.